Before we go very far into our study of networking, I want to make very clear about these terms bit and byte. Now, most people understand the difference, but their usage of them is sometimes a little off, and that's what we want to be very careful about. A bit is a single digit, 1 or 0, and a byte is a collection of 8 of them. Now, a byte might represent a letter, a color, an instruction in a computer. Sometimes we have things like 4-byte color designations, for example. Bits are designated with a small b, bytes are designated with a capital B. And when we talk about transfer rates, such as communications over the network, we talk in terms of bits per second. But when we're talking about storage capacities, we usually express it in bytes. And that is where most people make their mistake. It's not uncommon to hear the uninitiated say, my internet speed is 250 bytes per second. Well, no, it's not. That would be 8 times the speed that you are actually getting. Because it's a transfer, it's a communication form, it's going to be expressed in terms of bits per second, not bytes per second. Whereas a disk drive is going to be in bytes. So if you see a term like capital M, small b, that would be a megabit or a million bits. So 250 megabits per second means you're getting 250 million bits per second across a network. You might see it written like this, capital Mbps for megabits per second, which is a million bits per second. Now, we have to be careful about that, and I'll cover that in just a couple of minutes. But here are some of the common prefixes. Capital K is for kilo, which means thousands. M for mega, which means millions. G for giga, which means billions. And T for tera, which means trillions. Now, the caveat here. Technically, a kilobyte is 1024 bits, and a kilobit is 1024 bits. So some sources like to use a different system. They'll use kilo, mega, giga, and tera for these even numbers, and they'll use a B instead, kibi, mebi, gibi, and tebi. So a kibibyte is 1024 bytes, a mebibyte is 1,048,576 bytes, and so on. In other words, multiples of 1024. Now, disk drive manufacturers use the 1000 standard, whereas computers always read them in the 1024 standard. So when you buy a disk drive, for example, and it says this is a 100 gigabyte drive, well, it's not going to say it's 100 gigabytes when you get it home and put it on your computer. It will be somewhat less than that because it's reading it as 1024, but they're selling it as the 1000 standards.